Welcome back to the Jameson Files. I'm so glad to have all of you with me. Thank you for being a part of our Jameson Files community and staying connected and engaged and looking to improve your professional lives every single day. We're so glad you're here, and you're in for a big treat today because my guest is none other than Kevin Henry. Kevin is a good friend. Goodness. You know, I was saying when I was speaking with Dana, your better half, my friend, Dana Johnson, in her interview on the Jameson Files. You know, I've known her for several years, but boy, we go way back into the depths of time. I mean, I think I've known you as long as I've been in the industry. That's been 24 years. So, am I right?
You're right, because I've been in at 25. So see, I mean, we kind of came in together, which is a really cool thing. I love that.
It's really cool. And so for those of you that might not know Kevin, an amazing history in dentistry. Kevin is the former editorial director of Dental Products Report and the former managing editor of Dental Economics, and currently is still tapping into his incredible gift in journalism for dentistry as the editor-in-chief of drbicuspid.com. In addition to that, Kevin has really blazed the trail in his passion for supporting the dental assistants in our profession, and has an amazing podcast, Dental Assistant Nation, that I encourage all of you to go check out and follow and subscribe to. But Kevin, you've not only been stepping out to support assistants, but you really have become a prominent figure in the speaking arena for dentistry, and our paths cross frequently on the lecture circuit. And so just continue to be so happy and proud of the things that you're bringing to our profession. And I'm so grateful you're with me today. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, I am glad to be here. And I'm always glad when our paths cross out there, no matter where that may be, even if it's online like this. So I think it's great.
Thank goodness for technology, right?
Amen to that.
Well, today I think our conversation is probably going to veer in a lot of directions. We tend to do that when we're having conversations. But what our primary focus is going to be maximizing the talents of dental assistants in our practices. And you know, I know that's where your heart really lies in our profession. And I'd love to start with how did that come to pass for you? I mean, 25 years in dentistry, 25 years on editorial teams of our most premier publications in media in dentistry. I'm sure you've been exposed to a great deal of insights and information. And what landed you in this place of wanting to support dental assistants the way you do?
I'll be perfectly honest. I fell into it. It was something that, you know, back when I was managing editor for Dental Economics, and I have such fond memories of working with John and Kathy during that time, whenever they were writing for Dental Economics, getting to know them, going down to the ranch, you know, all that good stuff. It was about 6 years into my journalism there at Dental Economics that I realized we had Dental Economics magazine and we had RDH magazine, but we didn't have anything for dental assistants. And so I started a publication. It was all online. It was called Dental Assisting Digest, and it eventually turned into a weekly newsletter that we sent out to our dental assistants. And it was just something that I felt like that there wasn't really anything out there that was letting them know every day, or at least weekly, as much as possible, how important they were, how much that they're valued.
Yes.
And I got very lucky that, you know, you and I were talking before we went on the air about the Oregon meeting, and the Oregon Dental Association reached out to me in 2005 and said, hey, we need a dental assisting speaker. Could you put something together? And I was like, oh gosh, yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And so it's been about 20 years of speaking to the assistants, and just, I love whenever I can do something online to remind them, but whenever I can get in a room and really, you know, as you well know as a speaker, when you can, you know, really see it in their eyes that they get the message, that just makes a world of difference.
Wow. You know, Kevin, I don't know if you remember this, but the reason our podcast is called the Jameson Files, it's named after my dad's old dental economics column, the Jameson Files. Do you remember that?
I absolutely do. And I will tell you, seriously, they were two people that, you know, I came from sports public relations into dentistry. I knew nothing about this, but John and Kathy were two of the first people to put their arm around me and say, you know what, let me teach you, let me show you some things. Let me introduce you to some folks. And so I will always be grateful to them for that. Your family
Oh,
has blazed such a trail, and yeah, Jameson Files, it holds a special place in my heart too, for sure.
I love that. And, talking about the assistants and just seeing that need, I think that is just such a tremendous gift that you've given, because I agree there's so much untapped potential and opportunity in not only in the professional development of our clinical assistants, but in them embracing another level in their roles in the practice and the power that they have in the health of the practice and in the relationships with the patients. So, 20 years of speaking and really connecting to these assistants, I'm sure you have learned a lot along the way and have really honed in on some specific areas of opportunity to maximize these team members. Can you share a few of those insights that you've gained over the years?
Gosh, yeah. And I will tell you, it's funny that the insights that I kind of learned back in 2005 and early on, they're the same now, but they're so much more
Mm,
critical now that we have the staffing shortage, and then we have to make sure our teams stay together. And I think you hit something on the head whenever you were talking just a moment ago, is that they have to realize themselves how important they are. I have met countless assistants, and I'm sure you have as well, with all that you do, that they introduce themselves as just an assistant, or they see
yes.
themselves as this person that doesn't matter in the practice. And let's be perfectly honest here. We're in a safe space here, the Jameson Files, right?
Right.
They know they're the lowest paid person on the team. They know that. Everybody
Mhm.
knows that. And so we have to make sure that that elephant that's in the room kind of comes out, and we
Yeah.
say, you know what? Money's one thing, but the empowerment and getting them to really buy into the fact that they have this relationship with the patients, that they have this trust that they build with the patients, that the patients almost see them as an equal. And I will tell you, if you can have your assistants understand the value that they bring to each and every
Mm.
appointment when that patient's in the chair, it's a game changer for them and for the practice as well.
And would you agree, Kevin? I mean, so much of that is the culture of the practice itself.
For sure.
What the leaders of the practice are doing to instill that sense of value into those assistants. There's so much trust that the patients have from long-term team members. So much trust that those patients are looking to those assistants to determine if they're making the right decision or if it's a decision that they even need to make. And so I'm curious, in your presentations, when you're speaking to assistants,
Yeah.
what are the biggest pieces that you're encouraging them to do to level up their skills or
Yeah.
lean in more to accomplish in their roles?
The biggest thing that I always tell them is to not be passive. They have
Mm,
to actually take control of their own career. And for a lot of dentists who may be listening to this, I know that may sound a little scary, but what I'm
mm,
asking them to do and what I'm kind of pushing them to do is not sit back and wait on the dentist to say, you know what, I would love it if you did this. I
mm,
want them to research their state laws. I want them to know what every dental assistant can do in every state, and then come to the dentist with a business plan and saying, if I'm able to be trained on this, and if we incorporate this into the practice, here's the bottom line impact, and here's what it can do for us. I think whenever they come up with a business plan on their own, they come up with a plan for their future on their own, they own it much more than somebody else saying, here's what I want you to do. Now they're
mhm.
saying, here's what I want to do. And so I think as a dentist, if you're listening to this, I hope that you'll encourage your assistants to come up with that map. Where do they
Yeah.
want to be a year from now? And what's it going to take to get there? What do you need to invest in their learning, in their empowerment, whatever it is? What kind of resources do you need to put toward that? Because again, safe space here. These dental assistants, I hear constantly that, well, they all want money. They want more money. They need raises. I will tell you, the vast majority of assistants that I talk to, it is not about the money.
Mhm.
It is about going somewhere where they feel valued and they
Yes.
feel like that they're actually a part of the team. And I think
Yes.
you can instill that in them, that's worth more to them than an X amount of dollars more per hour anytime.
Yes. You know, um, there was a study that the ADA Health Policy Institute, you may have seen this, about the reasons hygienists have left a former employer, a dental practice. What are the
Okay.
top reasons hygienists are leaving? And it listed also, it gave a nod to responses that assistants gave of why they left. And culture was number 2 reason for assistants. Tied with being overwhelmed. And so, money was number 1, but I think that's the elephant in the room, right? The salary, the wages, they're needing to make a good living wage.
Absolutely.
And but when culture's number 2, I think that speaks directly to what you're saying, Kevin, is that there's so much more that would lead an assistant to stay and be a loyal, high performing team member if we all just had a heightened sense of awareness of what it is that makes our work meaningful. As leaders, to know that about our team members, what is it that they're looking for fulfillment in their careers? Can we provide a space to allow them to develop, grow, and thrive, and then be able to reward them and work well done? The expanded functions, the expanded duties, like you just mentioned, are a perfect example of an opportunity to grow and develop professionally, that a practice could provide their assistants that perhaps those assistants couldn't find somewhere else.
And I always hear, well, why would I pay for that? They just may go to another practice. I always hear that as a
Yeah.
rebuttal whenever I speak to dentists at study clubs or wherever it might be. And my response is always, why wouldn't you take that chance and
Yes.
invest in them and show that investment in them? Because I think
Yes.
today, this generation of dental assistants that is coming in, I will tell you, their priority is so much to feel like that they found a home, to feel like that they found
Mm,
somewhere that they can, that they can also not take drama home with them.
mhm.
All these things that are so important today, that they can have that work-life balance, but when they're at work, they really feel like that they are a part of things. And so I think that that's really something, if I had a wish list, for
Yeah.
those who are listening, I would absolutely put, like you said, culture at the top of that.
For sure, because I got to see you present at the Hinman this year, the Hinman meeting,
Oh, good.
and
Well, good.
that was awesome.
Thank
You were awesome. It was such a great class. It was on leadership, and you were actually speaking to the business team in that course. But you were talking about, here's what we're seeing on the horizon about the number of hygienists and assistants that are likely to leave the profession in the next 5 years, and that was rattling.
It
And
is.
and I think that strongly supports your point that you were giving then and that you're saying now, that we as leaders, business owners, doctors have got to understand how crucial it is to create a thriving culture if we want these team members to stay, because there's not enough coming in to offset those that are going out. And so the supply and demand of team members for a really um, high performing practice are going to be more challenging as the years go along.
And I'm going to throw out that number, because I always do this, because I think we've got to understand, like you just said, people keep saying, well, when is this going to get better? And this was a report that was done from the Dental Assisting National Board, the American Dental Assistants Association. When I was with Ignite DA, we played a role in this. And then it was also through the ADA. So it was a joint partnership. 1/3 of dental assistants currently are expected to leave the industry in the next 5 years. So when you think, I know, I mean
That
that
gives me chills. It's
it's huge.
rattling. I mean, that's
Now, granted, that is not, we are going to have some come in, as you
yes.
mentioned, but I will tell you, the rates that they're coming in versus they're leaving, they're not proportionate, like you said. So I think if you have a team member there that you really enjoy and that you feel like is a part of your future, then you have to do what you can to ensure that that person understands that. And a lot of that is
Yeah.
just simple communication, talking about, the goals for the practice, how they fit in, what you see as the vision for the practice, where they fit in, things like
Mhm.
that.
And all primary purpose for that is fulfillment in their work, longevity in team members, developing them to be able to perform at their highest level. All that aside, knowing how short-staffed so many practices have been and continue to be, how difficult it is to fulfill roles, how busy practices continue to be, it only benefits these practices to explore expanded duties for these team members, for no other reason than to maximize the team that they have to do all of the dentistry and take care of all the patients that they need to be seeing in any given day. So if for no other reason than to fulfill the needs that you have for your practice, to maximize these team members benefits you.
Absolutely. And one thing I would encourage everyone is go look at your state laws for dental assistants and what is
Mm,
legally allowed there, because they are constantly evolving. And
mhm,
so there are a lot of states, including I believe Oklahoma, that things have changed there in the last year.
mhm,
So, go and make sure that you understand what your dental assistants can do. And absolutely, if you have EDAs, if you have EFTAs, if you have CDAs, RDAs, whatever acronym you can put after that person's name, and you encourage them to chase that and to go for that, I think not only are you showing the faith that you've got in them, but also, again, that they're a part of your practice. They're a part of
mhm.
your team, your long term future, and that's worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely. So creating that opportunity for development, expanded duties, maximizing their abilities to fulfill that kind of meaning in their careers. What else are you encouraging these assistants to step forward and lean into?
I'm encouraging them to step forward and become leaders in their own
Mhm,
little pockets in the practice. And again, it goes back to taking control of the situation. It goes back to not sitting back, but saying, if I'm in charge of ordering, if I'm in charge of infection control, whatever I may be in charge of in the practice, how can I make sure that we are actually doing it the most efficient way and the safest way, especially whenever it comes to infection control. I was just at the OSAP, which is renamed Association for Dental Safety now, meeting. And that's one thing that I heard so often is that these new team members, most of them are coming in from outside the dental industry. Most of them
mm,
this may be their first job. And so teaching them infection control and having them understand the value that is such an important thing right now. But
mhm,
for those assistants who have been around for a while, it is really making sure that the areas that they can control in the practice, how do you make sure that you're not just at 90% there, but you are at 100%, whether it's keeping patients safe, it's keeping them informed, whatever it might be.
when I was talking with Dana, your Dana
Yes.
Johnson,
Is that
and we were
right?
talking about workflows from her standpoint, and with practice management software, with the business operations of the practice, and they were, I highly recommend that everyone, if you haven't listened to that episode, please do so. Um, but this is also speaks to workflows, Kevin. I mean, what you're saying is for the assistants to really own and embrace the workflows that they could be ultimately or should be ultimately responsible for.
Yeah.
Infection control being operative number one, to keep that practice safe and aligned of what's required of them, to be in compliance, if for no other reason than to keep those patients safe. If you don't
Absolutely.
need any other reason, it's for the health and well-being of the patients that you serve. But the fact of the matter is, to your point, 80% isn't good enough.
It's not. And I think the dental assistants have to have that voice. You mentioned the efficiency, and this is something, it's funny, Dana and I talk about this so much. We have such great pillow talk. I tell you, it's fantastic. Workflow efficiency, let's discuss. But it is something to me that if a dental assistant sees something that isn't efficient or sees
Yeah.
something that could be made better, that he or she has the freedom to say, what about this? Now, I know we never
Mhm.
want to say, in my last practice, we did it this way.
Mhm.
But I think that dental assistant at least has to have the ability to say, could we try it this way and see
Mhm.
if there's a difference, because it's hindering us, it's slowing us down. So I think
Mhm.
as long as they have that freedom, that's another big thing as well.
Well, and that also, just that little snippet that you just shared, it speaks to communication skills.
Oh, for sure.
That, to be the best you can possibly be, and no matter what role you're in a practice, your ability to effectively communicate with care is such a key factor with your doctors, with your teammates, with the patients. And you're a certified DISC instructor. So, and which DISC, for those of you that may not know, I feel like many people in the dental realm know the DISC behavioral styles. But that, I think that speaks to it too, right, Kevin? That
Sure.
those communication skills, our ability to navigate the differences between us and our teammates and our patients, but with the intention being for the best possible good and outcome for the practice. How can I communicate these needs that I'm finding for the practice, and not just simply say, well, that's not my job. Well, I don't want to, I'll just do
Yeah.
whatever. To take that kind of initiative and sense of ownership for the sake of the practice.
And I will tell you, I taught DISC every time that I'm doing a dental assisting lecture, because I think it's important for dental assistants to understand the different personalities that there are in the practice. And the biggest reason that I teach them that is because the one thing I hear time and time again is that, oh, my dentist will never go for that. My dentist will never listen to me. And I'm like, it may be because you're presenting it in a way that isn't as appealing to him or her. You're not understanding what he or she wants to get out of the game. And so that's the biggest thing that I try to have them understand is if that person's a different personality, what is it that they're looking for every day? And how can you craft that message, not to manipulate them,
Right.
but to have them understand much more why you think it's important and you all get on the same wavelength.
There's a big difference between influence and manipulation.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely.
And what we're wanting to encourage all of the assistants that may be watching is to build that influence for good that can help, and learning how to communicate and understanding the motivators behind the people that we're engaged with makes all the difference to help get them into that conversation.
And one thing that I have learned whenever I've tried to pair DISC with dental assistants is that the vast majority of them out there are S's. They are, and for those of you that don't know, that's much more the ones who are not the ones who will tell their opinion first, but they're going to wait to be asked. They're going to be more passive. And so what I always encourage is to break out of that shell a little bit, because if you're working with somebody who's much more dominant, somebody that has a bigger personality maybe than you, that may cause you to sink back and think that your opinions aren't as important. But I will tell you, the dental assistants that are in the workflow every day, the ones that are hearing what the patients are saying whenever the dentist leaves the room, those are the pieces of information that they simply have to pass along. And it also has to mold how their communication is with the rest of the team, because often they will be told things, by trust by these patients that they simply have to have as a part of the conversation.
So, growing and developing in your skills, in your role in the practice,
Sure.
Stepping up to the plate as a leader within your circle of influence in the practice,
Absolutely.
building those communication skills so that you can have a positive influence on the practice. Any other bit of advice for our assistant friends?
You know, my daughter Julia, who's now
Yeah.
26, and one thing that I've told her since the day she was little, and I believe this, is if you don't believe in yourself, no one else is going to. And that's what I tell my assistants, because so often they'll say, nobody's going to listen to me. That'll never change. And I have to have them have that belief in themselves and the belief that something will actually change. Because if you go into a battle already defeated, you know what the outcome's going to be. So I will only add, absolutely have that belief that not only do you have the power to have things change, but that things will actually change as well.
I love that. I love that. So for any of you out there that are listening that are assistants, these are your marching orders. This is your battle cry, is, take the next step in your professional development. Work on those communication skills so that study, read, listen to a podcast, watch a course, and practice on improving those skills. Step up in your circle of influence and then believe in yourself that you do have power of influence to impact the people around you in that practice in a positive way. You actually are influencing the team one way or another, and your patients one way or another, whether you do anything or not.
Amen.
And so my hope, and I know that Kevin's hope, is that you will recognize that and embrace the good that you can bring to your team, to your doctors, to your patients. And if you're a doctor or a team leader, I want you to take a step back and look at the team that you have in front of you, and where are you missing out on untapped potential and opportunity, where you could create a culture that motivates, a culture that inspires, and a culture that delegates authority, leadership, and opportunity to those team members so they can thrive and help your practice thrive with you. So, Kevin, I loved this conversation. I hope that those of you that are listening or find yourself in this episode feel inspired to look at how you can not only benefit from maximizing these team members, but what if you started maximizing these team members and everyone can enjoy the rewards of the work that comes from that? That can help offset that number one issue, the elephant in the room, because we're maximizing this team and the return can be shared between all of us. So Kevin, how can people find you? Because I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be hungry for more on how they can encourage and grow and develop the assistants on their team.
Well, would love for you to join us on Dental Assistant Nation, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there with a new episode that comes out every week. So it's my little message of encouragement of bringing on great people in the industry to share that. I know that you've been on there before and that you've shared your message for assistance. So I love that. And then if you want to reach out to me, I'm always happy to answer any questions I can. Disc, dental assisting, whatever. Kevin@kevinspeaksdental.com.
And if you don't already subscribe to drbicuspid.com, I want to recommend that, because Kevin, you're doing an incredible job creating amazing content.
I appreciate
daily
that.
on that platform. So
I have a great team of editors who scour the news wire, and we talk about the good and bad in dentistry for sure. So thank you for that.
That's all right. So keeping your finger on the pulse, 25 years in and still going strong, my friend. So thank you. Thank you so much for being with me. I appreciate you and what you're doing.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for joining us again. It's always a pleasure to be with the Jameson Files community. So thanks for being with us. Be well, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Jameson Files. Visit us online at jmsn.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or Spotify. See you next time.